Hi, Bradley.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't know who else is going to show up today, but
Since we are in collaboration, like we are working together, I thought it would be good if we talk about that. So this is the thing, and yeah. So, and you talked about in the mail that you sent. You talked about the like we have like project ideas for GSOC 2020. So
yeah.
so lots of things are happening.
All right. Ziyi, so I wonder if you give a short update about what's going on in your world.
Yeah.
Well, do you still remember that I talked about like lab project like to simulate the behavior of mouse sitting in all the space?
Yeah.
And I came up with a model using hidden Markov chain of I don't know what's order, but so the PI just gave me the permission to access the data. There's a lot of data, I think, and to try to build a Markov model. So that would be cool. But I haven't get started yet.
I mean, it sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. So you're in the lab you're working in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good. Did you do anything more with you're talking about the retina?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some results, and well, I'm still modifying. You know, I'm trying to like make more genome and sets that's constrained on the evolution stuff in the genetic algorithms, so as to make the simulation more robust. I got some results, and they are basically very much like 2 or 3 layers with feed-forward inhibitory connections and feed-backward secondary connections, or vice, the reverse. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't, get to like analyze the networks. I'm currently just modifying the genetic algorithms to see if I can get the results that are more similar to the real retina.
Yeah, I mean it's always tough to get genetic algorithms exactly right, like in terms of finding like the global optimum and things like that. So yeah. I mean, it's just going to take a lot of trial and error, I think, on that part. I mean, there are ways to like optimize their design as well. Like a lot of people use modularity. A lot of people, so how are you mapping you have to map some of the features of your system to a gene. So how are you doing the mapping?
Right. And currently I am playing with the fitness function. So basically the fitness function evaluates 3 factors. One is the error that the retina make, and another is the number of cells in the retina, which I think that will affect the energy cost of the retina, and also the layers. If there's more layers in the retina, then that means the light generating the retina is going to be affected. So I'm currently playing with the coefficients of the 3 terms in a cost function.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, well, good luck. So, is that something that's due like soon in one of your classes, or is that just like an ongoing thing?
Sorry?
Is this something that's due pretty soon in one of your classes, or is this an ongoing project?
It's an ongoing project.
Okay, so you're still kind of working, yeah. But as I say, if it's a class project, people usually try to like hurry up to finish like to get to some plateau, and then. But yeah, that sounds good. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So I got your equations that you sent me for the for the paper, and I got them rendered actually. Let me show you. I was having some trouble with them. It was just I think a little bit of syntax in rendering them in.
Right. I actually noticed some sort of, I don't know, syntax difference between like the latex I used before and this latex rendering extension that I used.
Yeah. So this is in GitHub Markdown, and then I have a plugin in Chrome for this. Right. So, and then this is how it renders. So I think it looks all right. Yeah. So then, I'll put that into the paper, which is another problem I've got. Like, I was trying to copy and paste, but it wasn't working last night. So I'll try it again. Then we'll have them in there. The last one worked pretty
well. You can just leave it there, and finally we're going to use a latex editor, and then just paste all the text into the latex editor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, but it is very hard to make a very well formatted paper, according to the journal's requirements with just the latex editor.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the journal. Some journals have like a LaTeX style template, and some don't. Like if they're like a computational journal, often they'll have a style template ready. And if they're not, then they don't even know what LaTeX is. So it's like you have to go and you convert it to Word anyways. So it's tricky. But yeah, so that's good. Thanks for the update. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up or add?
Nope, not right now.
Okay. So Ankit. So yeah, I was looking over the person's website. Do you have the link to the website or his lab?
I'll just share it with you. Okay. The first one is the lab link, and the second one is like his university website link.
All right. Yeah, there it is. So I guess I can share my screen. We'll just kind of walk through.
Yeah.
There we go.
I've shared just two links just now.
Oh, okay. That one too.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find this one too. Yeah, that's his personal web stub on yeah.
Yeah, the first one is the lab link, and the second one is
yeah. So this is the lab, and so you can go to research.
Yeah.
And so this is cooperation, charity, punishment. So these are all topical. Adaptations in spatial cognition for gathering, music genes and cultural universals. So what area you said you were interested in, the sort of the, which area were you interested in?
Yeah, if you go to this, if you go to the top, I'll let you know. If you go to the resources, he has certain things over there. Resources. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He has some simulations, and these things are the things that he has here on the left part. Here, these things are actually Java simulations, which he did maybe when he was doing his PhD at UC Santa Barbara.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so these things only caught my eye. So I thought, I feel like comfort on making simulations. So I just told him if I could be any value to his lab, and the ideas in the lab seemed very interesting. So he told me that I could be of use to some of the projects, that are going on. We haven't talked about what exactly I will be working, but he thought that I will be of some use, so I said it's fine.
Yeah.
As far as it works, yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like
Mhm.
this one or the educational simulations. So he's doing a bunch of things with like frequency dependent selection, reciprocal cooperation. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually interested in game theory myself. Aside from what we're doing here,
Mhm.
I like this. I'll have to look this over in terms of like how they're implementing these simulations. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, there's something there that that we could talk about, collaborate on, etc. Things like evolutionary dynamics are also interesting. Um,
Mhm.
and then simulating the evolution of generosity. Do you want to see a
Yeah.
generosity evolve? So this is associated with a paper, which is
Yeah.
nice because it's like it's already been published and it's an agent-based model, which they're always pretty interesting. I don't think people explore them enough. I think I think there's a lot more to be said about them.
Exactly. So he talks like on these very naive topics. He has built some simulations and how things like go around in these areas. So it seemed like pretty interesting, and I told him so. Yeah. So I'll have like much problem because Boston is very expensive. So
Yeah,
I don't know where to get funds for that. So
yeah,
yeah, but still I don't know how to get it. But hopefully, like since it is Harvard, most people at my university told that you'll get funding from somewhere. So just be hopeful and keep trying.
oh yeah,
Please.
definitely.
Yeah.
And
Fine.
now,
So yeah, you're saying something.
well, I was gonna say I didn't know if Harvard had funds for like visiting scholars. It might be worth checking like they have like a financial aid office or they have like a something like that where they might sponsor people. I mean, it wouldn't be automatic because you'd have to actually go to their office and say, I want to do some summer research with this person, and they might
Mhm.
write you a letter of recommendation. So you might check that out. You might go around their like financial aid office, or sometimes they have like a visiting scholars office. You can check in those areas and see if they have anything for people because they do have a lot of visiting scholars at Harvard, and it's might
Mhm.
be something that they offer, or some private foundation where they have a money for just that purpose, and you would be able to get a pretty reasonable sum. But you have to apply as soon as possible. I think for the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's get back to our case, which is like you sent me some certain papers on boids and things like that, but
Yeah.
I haven't actually gone through that because my exam ended on 28th, so I was kind of chilling for about 2 days. So I started working on the things and saw the videos yesterday and today. So yeah, so I have certain questions about what we are doing and what we're about to do so that I can write the things in a
Okay.
better way. So, firstly, like which is the journal that we are aiming for to like publish our thing?
Well, I've been trying to figure out which journal that would be most suitable. I've been
Mhm.
thinking. I was thinking of the Journal of Open Source Software, but I don't know if it's going to be like it might fit in there, it might not. I can. What I'll do is when we get close to being finished, I'll make an inquiry to the journal. Like they have these pre-submission inquiries, and I can
Mhm.
go to different places, and I can like give them a summary of the paper once we have it really in place, and then
Mhm.
they can give an idea of like whether it's something that they would be interested in publishing because it's tricky. They have like
Mhm.
sometimes they have very specific like requirements of the paper. Sometimes it's sometimes it's a really good fit, sometimes it's not. So it improves your chances of getting in accepted or not. Um, there are other journals like modeling journals. There's something called Theoretical Biology and Medical Modeling, which is like a modeling journal that isn't like really, highly ranked, but that also means that you can improve your chances of getting accepted. I used to be a fan of the idea of submitting it to the most, the highest sort of ranked journal that you can, and then working your way down. But the issue there is that you oftentimes just get a rejection, and sometimes you get good reviews and sometimes you don't. We also have this issue of we don't have money for like an APC fee. So, if we go to a place like PLOS, we could go there, but we'd have to find the money to get published, because you pay a fee to actually publish the paper. So I was thinking of PLOS, maybe PLOS Computational Biology. That might be a little shooting too high in this case, because we don't have like traditional results. We have it's like more of an exposition of different approaches. And so that's where we kind of run into a problem, I think, with FIT, is that it may fit some journals very well and others not at all. So, I think the Journal for Open Source Software might be a good place to start or to think about seriously. And then, we'll check it out and see if they're interested.
Yeah, that sounds good. So that's the thing, and like as far as my part is concerned, I will like the idea is already there. I've done some basic simulation, like the preliminary simulations. So, but there is always scope for improvement. So, like presently, the vehicles I have the simulation. They have like only bidirectional, but I was trying to improve the features. So I was just about like I asked these questions earlier also that what's the timeline that we are going to submit. So I can aim that like if I would be able to do some like some changes or I should stick to that. So the idea remains same, but introducing my simulation recordings, there we can have some improvement later on. So you told that we are submitting at the end of December. So
yeah, I was thinking we could aim for the end of December to get like a version out, and then of course, if we end up putting it into review and reviewers want something more, we might give it to them that way. Like that would be like a couple months delayed after that. So. And then we can always have different, if we just have it as a preprint before we actually get it published in a journal, we can add like new versions of the preprint. So like we can try to shoot for the end of December for a preprint where we can, get it out, first version of it, and then submit it somewhere. And then if that gets accepted, great. If it doesn't, then we can maybe put a second version up of a preprint. And then, we might improve things a bit and then resubmit it. And then, people can see this progress going on and we have a record of it, out there. So it's I would try to shoot for the end of December. I'd try to maybe kind of just tidy up what you have right now. And then, once we get that in place, then we can maybe improve upon it. I'm a big believer in taking, you have a publication, but you also have other parts like the open software and open data, things like that. So I've published papers where we've had a couple versions of a preprint and we've improved upon the data that we've made available. So it's publishing data, for example, is its own kind of component to the publishing process. I've had a couple papers where we have the paper and then we have the data set, and those are two different citations. And it's good because you can give people and we can do the same thing with code. It's good that you give people updates on say the code part, which you might publish say at Figshare or Zenodo, which are two sites where they archive code and they put a DOI on it so you can cite it. That's a good way to get people interested in your platform, is to put it in a publication and say, we use this software and it's published here at Zenodo. And then they go to the Zenodo link and they have these versions that are updated. And then, it drives people to your software. And then it also gives you an extra sort of citation that you can, show people your work instead of having them root around a GitHub repository for it. Usually do that like for a version that's, a stable version. So, you get to a version where it's stable, and then you make I think what you do in cases where you create a release of your code is you download, there's a way to do it on GitHub where you download your code into a zip file and then put it at Zenodo, post it on as an entry, and then you get a DOI minted, which is a number that identifies the publication or the published code, and then you can cite it, and other people can cite it, and you can get exposure that way too. So, the short answer is I would just tidy up things for now and get it written up, and then we can keep working on it perpetually, and then that would be the strategy, is to have like some sort of public release for the publication, and then just keep updating that public release as you go on, as you make changes. And it's all, it would all be in the same place. It would just be different versions of it. So it would be like version 2, version 3, and you'd have changes to it where people could access the code. Because a lot of times people go to your, for open source software, they might go to your GitHub repository and not exactly know like what the version is. So like they're reading the paper and they go to the repo, and they say, well, this isn't exactly the way they described it in the paper. And so, that's always a problem. And I think the best way to do it, of course, is to have it more organized in terms of how you're releasing it and, how you're pointing people to the final product.
Yeah. So as I told you that, like, I would be on a short-term internship in another lab for winter. So, like, when the internship starts, so by next week I should be done with the write-up in as far as my part is concerned in the paper. So I had another issue, which is like I have assumed certain equations, just like Ziyi has assumed some equation. I have assumed some monotonous functions. So there can be a lot of functions. I have assumed certain constants on my own. So and I don't have any citations for that because they are just because I read the book, I got an idea that the person is saying to use a monotonous function. I deduce a monotonous function and I implement it, and it's working. So does that work in a paper, or I need to do something else?
So let me show you how we did it. Well, how we're doing it with Ziyi's equations. Let me present. So you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So the best way to do this is to produce some markdown code. And so if you go to GitHub, you'll see that this file is equations.md. And I created this in the manuscript folder. And then this is where I'm kind of storing these equations to render them. So what I have is I have this markdown file. You just create it by, creating a file, whatever, MD. And then you have this plugin or I have a plugin, you can download it on Chrome, that allows you to, I don't remember the name of it, but there are a couple of them actually. So that'll basically enable you to read LaTeX on GitHub. And so this is how it looks. You have equations and you have the descriptions underneath. So let me give you a link to this page, because this is how you should lay out the equations. All right. And so that's how you lay them out in this format. but I wanted to show you how it's actually done. So if we go to edit file, we can actually see the code here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using like basic LaTeX, so we're using this syntax here. And so this would be the first equation. And it's basically, there are like ways that GitHub does it a little bit differently, but it can be, we can figure out how to render it in GitHub. It's basically the same as the LaTeX or MathML code. So you have the $2 signs at the beginning and end, and you just put them in like that. And so if you can, create like, just put the, create a file like this, put it in, turn it into LaTeX, and then save it, and then with this plugin, if you plug, install it on Chrome, you'll be able to see these plugins as actual equations rendered. It's a bit tricky sometimes to get it to work right, but I got it. See, it'll take a while to render it.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But then we can handle it a little bit more easily, pulling it into Google Docs and working with it on GitHub as a document. So that's the way I would set it up. I would set it up like center the equations, and don't worry about the numbers right now. We'll number them in the document. And actually, sometimes what they'll do in journals, depending on the journal, is they'll have the equations as a supplemental file. So you might have your equations like, listed like that, where you just have like, the equation for this, the equation for that, and a little description. And they'll have it in a supplemental file that will come with the paper. It just cleans up the main text so that people can like go through the methods, and then you just say, well, our equations for this are in supplemental file 1, and then they link to that, and you can go see it. But you don't have to like go through a bunch of equations in the main document. So in terms of citing your equations, if you took like an idea from somewhere, it's good to mention the reference and cite it. But you don't want you want to say something like, this is taken from this reference. Like, it's not exactly what they did, but you would have like, you always want to err on the side of citation if, you have something that is taken from somewhere. So if it's not exactly the way they did it, then you can say taken from or adapted from this citation. And then, just put your equations down in your notation. And, yeah, and I know kind of what you're talking about, the things with the angular rotations and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit different, I guess, from the original notation, but I would still cite the original source, kind of like the inspiration for it. So that would be good.
Yeah, so the things will be like the equation come when we talk about the vehicular kinematics, and actually in my presentation I had written some equations. So there were not many. So yeah, that sounds good. So like I'll be traveling about 2 days while I'm going to the internship place. So I hope that I will be able to complete, but I'll let you know in the meantime what happens. Yeah. So as I talked about, like I went to the recordings of last meeting. So you talked about geneBiosemantics.org. So I looked at that actually looked very nice. And thereafter you talked about FQXISs. So and that so the problem with me is actually engaged with so many things, so and I have exams in between, so commitments to different people at my university and for research internships and things like that. So I need to study a lot, but I will study those things once I get time, and everything is seems very interesting to me, so I go for everything, and that's kind of not bad. So hopefully things will be fine. So yeah. So I'll go through those things and the papers that you sent me, and hopefully we can work our way out of this. Yeah. So that's all from my side for today.
That's good. Yeah, like I was telling Jesse before, it's good to prioritize things in terms of, like, I know I introduce a lot of things in the meetings and that, but it's good to prioritize like what you want to do. So like if you get an idea and it's really exciting, it's nice to follow up on it, but it's also good to have like a scheme where you can organize things and say, this is something we can do right away, or this is something that, might be good for later, but to still put it somewhere where you don't forget about it. So, I mean, I don't know, like, I haven't mastered myself how to do that. But I mean, I found when I was in grad school that, that's exactly what happened. I had a lot of things that I got interested in, and as you do, because you get like exposure to a lot of things. And so it's always good to have a scheme to organize those things and prioritize them, because it's like, it gets too overwhelming sometimes to just see all this stuff, and, you're trying to grab at it, and Ziyi knows what I mean.
Currently, I'm working at my university on cognitive science experiments, and I worked on something called brain imaging and fMRI, things like that, in my research internship last year in Taiwan. That was focused on consciousness. Working through the swarm systems, like our work that we're doing, and then I'm going to evolutionary psychology. So kind of. I was talking to my professor yesterday, and she told that you need to focus on one thing. Yeah. So I have 1 year to apply for PhD, so I just need to focus on something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like just finding the most tractable things and just kind of working on them, and that's a good strategy. And then having everything, like maybe if you are into like organizing things on your computer. Have like folders where you have like the stuff that you're working on right now, and then you have like a folder where it's things that you might revisit every couple weeks, and have them organized so that you can go back and say, oh, I remember when I was, maybe just go back to that folder and look at it and say, what's in here? Oh yeah, this thing I was thinking about. And you'll be surprised that like you get excited about something and you think about it and you put it in this folder. And then you're working on your stuff and you come back to it, and you'll immediately see like how this fits in maybe a little more closely with what you're doing, or see connections between other things, because you aren't thinking about it all the time. Like you're not tunneling into something, but it's there and you get reminded of it. And then, you're thinking about other things, and it's like, oh yeah, we could, here's another idea. So it actually might be effective to do something like that, where you're kind of like, you're not like throwing it out, but you're kind of keeping it off to the side, but you have it there so that you can periodically revisit it and see what comes up. It's, I mean, the other alternative is just to like try to do everything at once, and that's not going to work. So, but yeah, I think you're doing well. I'm glad that you were able to get through your exams well without too much difficulty. Z, do you have final exams coming up?
Yeah.
Okay.
After next week.
Oh wow! Well, good luck with that.
All the best. Fine. So we can maybe visit the paper once, and we can point out the things that I can do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why don't we look at the paper real quick?
Exactly. That's what I told.
Yeah. So let me share my screen here. Gotten a little bit more progress on it since last time, but let's review where we are. Here we are. All right. The authorship order is open to whatever people want it to be. I was gonna alphabetize it, but I might go as last author on it. But we can figure that out as we go along. The title is also up for suggestions for changes. I like short, simple titles. Sometimes those are the best. but if you can think of something better, you can propose it in there. Put together an abstract finally. So this is just kind of a first pass at the abstract. I tried to think about what everything is going to be in this paper, and this is what I came up with. So it's really we're connecting brain and behavior, and it has broader implications. But in this case, we're looking at the black box, and we are using Greenberg vehicles, and we're doing this with a number of approaches. And I might try to, let's see, you might want to be a little bit more specific about the approaches in here. Sometimes the abstracts are limited to a certain number of words. So how many words do we have? I don't think we have that many words right now. Uh, 194. So usually it's like between 200 and 350 for a journal. So, that's usually a pretty good length. So we can add in a little bit more in the abstract. Someone's computer is gone. So the introduction is we've got an introduction here. We've got I've got all the references renumbered, by the way, so that's good. So this is just kind of going through how do we understand the emergence of a connected nervous system, and we kind of introduce the approach, and then there's the motivation, which needs more work. But this is just the very basic part. So let me see. This is probably another place where we need more work. People, if you want to walk through this paper and point to specific areas where you think maybe there's another sentence that's needed or something, please feel free to put in a comment or propose like a sentence. And then neurodevelopment. So we get into neurodevelopment, which is again, this needs more work, but this is just kind of like giving a little bit more information about development as a process. And how kind of our models fit into that. Then the suitability of Greenberg vehicles. So I think these 3 points are pretty inclusive, but maybe we want to change them a little bit. Greenberg vehicles provide a simplistic structure-function relationship that provides us with an embodied neural system. And then this last point is that you can introduce a heterogeneous population of agents into the same environment, which that might be a little bit beyond what we're actually presenting here, although I don't want to get too much into how we implement it here, but I just wanted to give a description. Oops, let me not put in a link, I'll put in a note instead. Yeah. All right, and then we get into neurodevelopment and brain networks. So actually, I just noticed that there's neurodevelopment here. So it might actually make more sense to move this neurodevelopment section down. To here. That way we have sort of like a lead into the neurodevelopment and then neurodevelopment and brain networks. So you have this general neurodevelopment thing here where we talk a little bit about how cells differentiate, and then brain networks, which are different because those are actually how the cells are connected. And so then we have quite a bit of work on that, or quite a bit of writing on that. So that's going to be I guess, a critical part of the paper. So we have several paragraphs. Then we have development and connectionism, which is also important, I think, for understanding why we're doing what we're doing or how we're doing it. Or not so much how we're doing it, but why we're doing it. And then there's a section I think Jesse wants to add on embodied cognition, which is also important, but I don't want to spend as much time on that as I did on the other. But embodied cognition, again, if either of you have any good references for that or any good ideas what we might put in that section, let me know. I don't know how much either of you are familiar with embodiment. It's a bit of a tricky area because it's so diffuse. Like there's so many different definitions of it. So, but if there's something that you think, oh, I saw this paper, it might be suitable, please, you might suggest it.
Mm.
So then we have this generalized models of regulation, feedback and regulation emergence. All those things can be, I think we really want to kind of shorten it up at this point, but maybe even put this stuff at the end of the paper too. That might be a possibility. I might put this here. Because sometimes our discussion needs to be a little bit longer. Sometimes this sort of thing is better in the discussion area. So, I mean, this is just kind of like things that are sort of outcomes. So that might actually be something, although this section might be good in the front. These parts might be good in the latter part of the paper. So we'll consider that. I don't know. Maybe this part. Okay. And so I was actually hoping to work a little bit with Jesse on this part too, but we haven't gotten to it yet. So now we get to the methods, which is of course a lot of the meat of the paper, and we've got thank you Ziyi for contributing your part of the methods. So we have a lot of the equations in this section. So I haven't gotten anything from Stefan yet in terms of methods. Ziyi's given me like 5 equations to put in. So these are just kind of organized in terms of, I'm just ordering them and putting in the sections. So I still have yet to work on this. I just kind of put these in last night. What I do is I put the equations in invisible tables. So if you want to know how to do this, this is a table. And you make a table and then you hide the grid lines at the end. But this middle part is like maybe 70% of the width of the margins. And you put your equation in there. And then the right and the left frames, the left frame you don't put anything. The right frame you put your number in and you flush right. You align right. And then you do that for 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So that makes for a nice equation in your document. And then you can describe it underneath. So in this case, so this is what I got, I think, from cutting and pasting before. This is what I got from the other equations. So I may need to do some more investigating in how to put these in correctly, but I'll get them in. That's not a problem. So we have the equations, the methods. So and then there's a section, of course, on like the code requirements. So those would go in the methods. So I'm looking with Ankit, I'm looking for your methods to be right about here. And like I said, you can put your equations in and I'll number them in sequence here. Just worry about getting the equations right and then citing them with some like how they're inspired. It doesn't have to be the exact notation, but it has to make sense. Because if you go through the notation, sometimes it's very easy to make errors in equations. So just to let you know. So you might want to double and triple check your work on that. Then the results. So then we have, again, our computational model of developmental neuroscience. It's just to kind of go over this, what we're actually kind of doing here. And then the software instantiations. So this is, again, where we would put Stefan's work. And then Ziyi's got some of his work, his results in here. And it looks pretty complete. Unless Ziyi wants to add anything in, he's welcome to do so. I know he's made some changes in the past few weeks, so I incorporated those changes. It looks pretty good so far. And then this would be where Ankit would put his results. And again, it just has to be the description pretty much. Like I said, if they want, we're not really presenting experiments or anything like that in here. But if you want to do that, I mean, it would be, I don't know how much you'd gain out of it though. I would just focus on what you've shown, like really describing the different conditions, what it looks like. So we have that. And then we have the discussion section and future plans. So this is, again, where this is the least developed part of the paper, I think, where we don't have, like, we have a little bit of stuff on the discussion, like what, why we did it maybe, or what the concerns might be. We have this use cases section, which is, again, we've been talking about this, but this is, of course, if this is for Ankit's benefit, if you want to think about like how you might apply your model in terms of the stuff you might want to do this summer, or like how it might apply more broadly to different model systems like agent-based modeling, that might be a good way to go. And then, so the use case doesn't have to be really explicit in terms of how it's set up. As you'll see from this, we have Ziyi introduced this idea of the hinge connecting behavioral and neural models. And so this is just a way to maybe sort of implement your platform in the future. So if you want to, like, maybe how would you possibly use it in the future? So, it could just be something speculative, but it could also be something that's more tied to experiments. I would probably have a combination of both, simply because, if you're speculative, but you say this is how we might implement it, that's, I think, more convincing to people reviewing the paper. So, I mean, this is an idea from Stefan's talk, TSP and spatial cognition. You can kind of write that out. I've yet to do that. And then this is where I had Ziyi's placeholder, or Ankit's placeholder, swarm intelligence with Brainberg vehicle behaviors. And then that's where you can maybe put a use case on, I don't know, maybe agent-based models. We can put a list there. Where, like, put that in there. And so then that would be that section of use cases. And then we'd there's a section here where I said follow up on some of the concepts. So this might be where we put some of these ideas from up above and bring them down here. And then we might also have a little bit more discussion about about how this relates to other things in the literature, although that might go up into the discussion section, the main discussion. So let me make a note here. And then the follow-up on some of the concepts, I think that's probably a good ending to the paper. We'll just kind of like be very brief and just kind of like, maybe future directions. So if we... All right. And then that would be it. And then, so let's see. Let me do a word count right now on this. So we have 5,013 words. So a lot of journals want you for a research manuscript, say they want you to aim for like between 6,000 and 8,000 words, depending on the journal. Sometimes you can go up to 12,000, but that's a maximum. So we're getting into that range where it's close to being like in the range of a research article. So I think we're moving along on it pretty well. And then our references, of course, are here. And I have them renumbered so that they're all unique now. And right now I have 48 references. So that's also looking pretty close to what you'd see in a research paper. We had, this is accepted, I think. Yeah. So, I think we're coming along on this pretty well. And so, any contributions you think of, you might want to add, please do so. I think we're doing pretty well. We're coming along pretty well on this. And so I hope, by the end of December to have something that we can move forward.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, so thanks a lot for the walkthrough.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So we're at the top of the hour. Any other questions or comments?
Well,
Okay.
I think we're done.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, thanks for meeting this week. Probably meet next week as well. Stefan said he might join us next week, so maybe we'll get an update from him, and Jesse will be here. Okay, all right. Talk to you guys later. Have a good week. All right, bye.
Bye.